All right, now to a conversation that I was not hoping to have and not looking forward to, and that is the University of Delaware football game and season. James Madison goes away with the win, 22-10. They kicked 5 field goals, which was a record for the Dukes. This is a James Madison team that, if all things work out the way they plan, is going to be playing at the FBS level by this time next year, probably, or if not the year after. But it's probably the last trip James Madison has made to the University of Delaware, and the Blue Hen fans should be happy about that. On an aside, I hope the James Madison fans who supported this move to the FBS have looked at how the teams who have done this in the last 10 years have fared. Financially, probably very good. Wins and losses, not so good.
And you get a crappy third-tier pre-Christmas bowl game as compared to competing for a national championship
that nobody's willing to fly to watch wherever it is. Doesn't take place in your hometown. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. Unlike the first round of the FCS players, very well could. So James Madison wins 22-10. It gives UD their 4th loss. They're pretty much out of it. 109 total yards on offense. And Marty, I was at this game, as I mentioned, sitting in the rain, standing in the rain, walking around under the bleachers, trying to stay dry. The one good thing is in the new stadium, they've got the TVs down there on the new side of the stadium, but there's a little crowded under there once the rain started coming down. So didn't get to watch some of that. But their season's basically over. 4 wins you barely ever get in, even when one of those losses, 4 losses, I should say, is against Rutgers. So just not going to happen. They still got to play Dixie State, William and Mary, Richmond, and Villanova. The chances of winning out slim to none, but that's what they had to do starting with James Madison, and they didn't do. So, as a fan, Marty, and I went to Delaware. I've been a big fan. I always say, I'm fine if we don't win the national championship ever again. Do I want to? Absolutely. But I would take being relevant. I used to say I want to still be relevant. I want us to still be in when the clocks change. And then a couple of years ago, I changed that to I want to still be relevant at Halloween because it was a week earlier, a win or a loss earlier. And so this year I'm heading out, and we didn't even get to Halloween week. We lost on Saturday, and Halloween week starts on Sunday, leading up to next Sunday's trick-or-treating, and we're not relevant. Sure, there's that very minute. If we run the table and we blow these 4 teams out, maybe with our reputation, we get into playoffs. But nobody I've talked to, no writer has said anything other than most likely our playoff chances are done. So we are not relevant at Halloween. It's disappointing, especially coming off the spring. But it shows you how valuable a good starting quarterback is. And this is nothing against Zach Gwynn or any of the other quarterbacks that have come in. It's the fact that Delaware had the top CAA player on offense last year, Nolan Henderson, CAA first team. And he was injured off and on all season, and then obviously out with a surgery last week on his pelvis surgery. We wish him well. Apparently the surgery went very well from what we've read and heard. And so that's good news, and he will be back. But for the rest of this season, the offense is going to struggle. 109 yards against James Madison. And it's just, there's nothing else I have to say. I'm disappointed as a fan. Forget my role in any other way. I'm disappointed as a UD fan.
And midway, or probably close to 4 or 5 minutes remaining in the game, Scott Klatskin said on Flow Sports that, you're not going to win a game when you complete 6 passes and account for 25 yards in the second half of a game. I mean, those numbers are just, they completed 6 passes in the entire game. And they didn't run the ball either. They couldn't do that. Corey Sproul's out. Dejon Lee has been zeroed in on by every defense they played this year. Mickey Henry was out again. The offensive line is not doing a great job. There's just a lot of problems. One of the things I continue to be perplexed about, 2 things. One is that punt protection unit, which again, every week it gets closer and closer to the punter. At some point, they are going to kick one of these guys right in the backside because the blocks, it's sort of, they set up a wall, but they don't account for the individual blockers coming from different directions. And there had to be 4 or 5 punts nearly blocked again. And they result in these sky-high punts that are just not going very far. The other thing in my weekly Anthony Paoletti rant, again, 5 carries, 11 yards. Guys,
it's no secret who's getting the ball.
That he's getting the ball and he's going to run. He is not being allowed to throw the ball. So I don't know what they're doing. I keep saying every week, I hope they give this kid something more to do. He's a big kid. He's a competitor, but every team has figured this out by now. And the last thing, this is interesting. I got a direct message a couple weeks ago from somebody who said, does Rocco come back for next season? And I said, obviously, of course he does. He bought himself some goodwill with the semifinal run in the spring, as weird as that was.
And you lose your starting quarterback.
Yes. But you know what? Then I started looking at it further, and he's definitely coming back next year. I'm not saying that. But I have a question for you. Is he devolving into a Casey Keeler case? If you look at his records at Delaware, his first record is 7-4, 5-3 in the conference. They don't make the playoffs. Second record is 7-5, 5-3. They go to the first round of the playoffs. 2019, they go 5-7. They finish 9th in the conference. In the spring, they go 7-1, 4-0 in the conference, go to the national semifinals. They're going to finish with a losing record this season.
Yes.
Which will be his second since he arrived at Delaware. The other 2 seasons are 7-4 and 7-5. I recall you and I had this conversation too. One of the things, besides some other personal things, but that Casey Keeler, where he lost the fans, was that he would play for the national championship one year and go 4-7 the next year. And I in looking at this, it's starting to get that feel where, and I guess that's a recruiting thing, where they're not following up. As you said, you want to be relevant by Halloween. Most people in Delaware want to go into that Villanova game at the end of every season with at least an outside chance of the playoffs.
Right. Winning, you're in.
Losing, you're not.
I'm fine with that.
That hasn't happened. Yeah. I am too. So I just, it's not, and this is not an indictment of Coach Rocco, but I was really amazed when I looked into it at how his career at Delaware is now starting to mirror Casey Keeler in terms of success versus failure one season to the next.
And here's the problem, Marty, and you said it with recruiting. And I was never a Casey Keeler fan, and I made no secret about that. But here's when it dawned on me. And you always heard about our facilities versus other teams' facilities.
Yep.
And we went on a trip. We went down and watched Delaware play at Virginia Tech. And on the way, we stopped at James Madison to show our boys the facility, blah, blah, blah. And you walk into that facility, and I kind of felt like I was in the NFL.
I've been there.
And it's an incredible facility from start to finish. It is what the Whitney Center now provides.
Exactly.
Now, you can still argue Delaware Stadium is still not up to what James Madison is. The outskirts of it is. When you pull up and the new underneath on the west side is nice and all that. The east side has not changed. It's still 75 years old or whatever it is. That being aside, and that's a conversation for another time, here's what Keeler struggled with and what Rocco struggled with. If you're a recruit and you stop at James Madison and visit and see the facility, and then you come to Delaware Stadium, you're not getting out of the car in the parking lot. Now you would, but again, Rocco, until last year, the facility was not finished. And so he's trying to recruit against kids who are pulling up to James Madison and seeing that, going to Richmond and seeing that, going to other places, not even in the CAA conference. And the facilities just were not up to par. And in my opinion, they waited 10 years too long to change the facilities. And again, you can't go back and change anything. But I defended Keeler in that matter, that I thought it was tough for him to get recruits to come to college here. And that's why he counted on the JUCO kids and the kids who were transfers, because they didn't care about facilities. They cared about playing football on a team where they thought they had a shot to get to a national championship or to the NFL.
JUCO is
Joe Flacco. Yeah, exactly. And so they wanted to get on a relevant FCS team. They didn't care what the weightlifting facilities were. When you're a senior in high school, you compare that kind of stuff. And if you're comparing this is 3 years ago, you're comparing the University of Delaware to most other of the people we recruit against, most of the other schools we recruit against, I should say, you're losing that battle. And so I think that's the problem. I'd love to see Rocco, I think he's in his mid 50s. I'd love to see him get another 4-year contract, and I'm not sure when his contract is up, and have the opportunity to recruit with this new facility.
With the new facilities. Yeah, that is tough. And that's one of the reasons that JMU was so attractive to the Sun Belt Conference is the facilities down there. It's one of the reasons they were the only CAA team to be invited, the only FCS team, I should say, to be invited. So, yeah, the facilities play such a huge part. And it used to be, back when Coach Raymond was around, it used to be Delaware's success sold itself to recruits. You could walk in and show them your championship rings, your Yankee Conference championship rings. Now it's a brand new ball game. A lot of these schools are on an even keel when it comes to recruiting in the facilities. So you've really got to sell a kid to come to your place. And I had somebody else ask me about in-state kids and why they always leave but end up coming back. And I think the part of it is just very simple. It's, I remember when I was 18, so do you. Remember when you were 18? Sometimes you want to go away from home.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good the program is. It doesn't matter how much I love the kids at Delaware. I just want to get away from my parents for a little while. And then you get there and maybe it doesn't pan out the way you think. And, Delaware seems to be a fallback for some of these guys. And granted, some of these kids that come back are great,
right?
which is fantastic. But, yeah, to people saying, it always bugs me when one of the criticisms of Keeler, and it is of Rocco now, is, well, he's not keeping the in-state kids. That's hard. And, I always love when Florida and Miami and these guys, and they say, well, they keep their in-state kids. Yeah, guess what? It's a little different facility-wise at some of these schools than it is at Delaware. And it's a national thing, whereas Delaware is not right now a nationally known program, except for that semifinal run last year in that weird abbreviated spring season. But you've really got to sell the kids here. And kids, Wayne Knight was the first thing I thought of. He's going to Stony Brook.
Yep.
And somebody said, well, how come, man, why isn't he going to Delaware? Maybe he just wants to get out of Delaware for a while. His brother did it. He came back and then of course left again. He's about to leave his other school again. So I just, as far as that goes, I wanted people to kind of give Coach Rocco a break on the in-state kids. Sometimes kids are 18 and they just want to go away from home.
The draw to stay in-state 10, 15, 20 years ago was you played in front of 22,000 people every single Saturday.
You're right.
That's no longer there. And so now you go back to the secondary reasons you would come, facilities, that type of stuff. And again, until a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, Delaware's facilities were not even close to up to par with the other schools that they're competing against. So I give Rocco a pass. Great spring. Quarterback gets hurt. Not a whole lot he can do. But I'd love to see him sign for 4 more years and commit to bringing the best recruits possible in here now that they've got the facility to do that. All right.